You've probably asked yourself why your list of unfinished projects seems to grow faster than your list of achievements. You start an online course with genuine enthusiasm. You buy the book, watch the first few lessons, feel that familiar spark of possibility, and then somewhere between the second and third week, the whole thing just stops. Not because of laziness, not because of a lack of intelligence, but because something inside your brain seems to have changed the channel. If you recognize that pattern, I want to start with something that might sound counterintuitive. The problem isn't that you can't finish things. The problem is that you've been taught to misdiagnose what's actually happening, and that misdiagnosis is costing you years of real progress. Most people look at their list of abandoned projects and conclude they have a discipline problem. They think, I need more willpower, more commitment, more structure. And so they go looking for the next productivity system, the next app, the next book about habits. And the cycle starts over. Because the problem was never discipline, it was biology. To understand what's really going on, we need to look at your brain's reward mechanism with a level of honesty that most people tend to avoid. Your brain is not designed to complete tasks. It's designed to seek novelty, and there's a very precise evolutionary reason for that. For hundreds of thousands of years, survival depended on a nervous system that stayed alert to anything new. A change in the environment could mean food, or it could mean danger. The brain that responded quickly to the unfamiliar had the advantage. So over generations, the limbic system was calibrated to release dopamine, not at the completion of a task, but in anticipation of one. Not when you finish, when you begin. This explains the phenomenon behavioral researchers call the novelty bias. Every time you start something new, your brain experiences a small dopamine spike. The initial learning curve is steep, which means the rate of information gain is extremely high, and your brain interprets that as a signal that you found something valuable. You feel alive, focused, motivated. But that feeling isn't lasting interest. It's the neurological equivalent of a sugar rush, and then comes the plateau. At some point in any real project, you master the basics. The learning curve flattens. The rate of information gain slows down. And for a brain calibrated to respond to novelty, that deceleration signal gets interpreted as, this path is no longer productive. Go explore somewhere else. The dopamine drops. The motivation evaporates. And you can't quite understand why something that felt so important 2 weeks ago now feels completely hollow. Here's what makes this even more complicated. What you're experiencing in that moment isn't laziness. It's something neuroscientists call reward prediction error. Your brain made a bet. This project is going to keep giving me increasing returns. When the returns diminish, your brain doesn't interpret that as the normal process of deep learning. It interprets it as a signal that the bet was wrong. And so it goes looking for a new target to make a better one. The shiny new project isn't seduction. It's your brain following precisely the logic it was programmed to follow. But there's a second layer to this story that most analyses of procrastination and incompleteness miss entirely. And this is where it gets interesting. Researchers in the field of identity psychology, particularly the work of Hazel Marcus on Possible Selves, discovered something revealing. Part of the reason unfinished projects are so hard to abandon is that they represent versions of yourself that haven't yet been disproven. An unfinished project is, at the same time, a promise and a shield. Think about it this way. As long as the project remains unfinished, the version of you who completes it still exists as a possibility. You could still be the musician, the entrepreneur, the writer. Incompleteness preserves the potential identity, but the moment you finish, or the moment you formally quit, that version of you is submitted to a real verdict. And for many people, the fear of that verdict is greater than the discomfort of incompleteness. This creates a sophisticated psychological paradox. You keep starting new projects not in spite of the fear of failing, but because of it. Every new beginning is a renewal of potential, a recalibration of hope. And as long as the cycle continues, no definitive verdict ever needs to be pronounced about who you actually are. Behavioral therapists have a name for the resulting behavior: self-handicapping by dilution. You don't sabotage a single project in any obvious way. You dilute your attention across so many that none of them can be genuinely tested. And if none of them are genuinely tested, none of them can genuinely fail. Now, with that more precise diagnosis in hand, the question becomes, what do we do with it? The answer isn't willpower, it's architecture. The first step is what I call the Graveyard Audit. Before starting anything new, you need to sit down with your list of abandoned projects and ask one honest question about each of them. Did you stop because it got hard or because it got boring? That distinction is critical. Hard means you hit the plateau, the exact place where real growth begins. Boring means the project may have been a genuinely wrong bet for this particular moment in your life. Most people treat these two cases as identical. They aren't. If you stopped because it got hard, don't start something new just yet. What your brain needs isn't a new project. It needs a completion experience. Something small, but real. Finish a chapter, not a book. Complete one module, not an entire course. The act of completion, any completion, begins to recalibrate your reward system. You're teaching your brain that the cycle can reach an end, and that reaching the end also brings dopamine.
This brings us to the second principle, what behavioral psychologists call the minimum viable commitment. Most people don't fail because they chose the wrong project. They fail because they chose the wrong scale. You decide to learn Spanish and you picture fluency. You decide to start a business and you visualize the exit. That scale of vision is emotionally powerful at the beginning because it feeds the dopamine spike of a new start, but it also creates an enormous distance between where you are and where the reward lives. And your brain, operating on the logic of immediate return, simply cannot sustain commitment across that distance. The solution isn't to dream smaller. It's to create intermediate reward milestones frequently enough to keep the system engaged. Not, I'm going to learn Spanish as a terminal goal, but this week, I'm going to be able to order a coffee and understand the response. You're creating a series of small bets that your brain can verify quickly, and each positive verification is a signal that the path is working. The third principle is the hardest for restless minds to accept, the cost of optionality. Every time you keep a project on the maybe someday list, you're paying a real cognitive cost. Psychologists call this the Zeigarnik Effect. Incomplete tasks create an open loop in working memory. Your brain keeps trying to solve unfinished problems in the background, consuming cognitive resources that should be available for the project where you actually want to make progress. This means your growing list of beginnings isn't just cluttering your calendar, it's literally reducing your capacity to think clearly about anything at all. The decision to formally close a project to say, this isn't for now, and maybe it never will be, frees up real resources in your mental operating system. That isn't giving up, that's cognitive hygiene. And there's one final piece to this framework that productivity guides rarely mention because it touches on something more personal than techniques and strategies. The restless mind, the one that starts everything and finishes very little, often doesn't have a focus problem. It has a permission problem. Permission to be good enough at one thing instead of potentially brilliant at all of them. Permission to let the verdict be pronounced. Permission to discover, through actual work, who you are, rather than indefinitely preserving who you could be. The psychologist James Hollis wrote that the greatest tragedy isn't failing to reach your goals. It's never discovering what your real goals were because you never gave any of them enough time to reveal their truth. Completed projects aren't just items crossed off a list. They're data. They're concrete information about what energizes you, what drains you, where your talents actually live. Every completion, even an imperfect one, gives you access to a more precise version of yourself. And every premature abandonment, driven by the fear of a verdict, keeps you in the position of a spectator of your own life. Always in the audition phase, never on the stage. If you're watching this video and you recognize this pattern in yourself, I want to be direct with you. What you're looking for isn't a better system. It's a more stable foundation of self-knowledge. And that's exactly the work we do here, week after week. Not empty motivation, not productivity hacks, but the honest psychology of how you actually function and how to use that functioning in your favor instead of fighting against it. If that resonates with you, subscribe, because the next conversation is going to go even deeper into exactly how to turn this pattern into something that works for you. The restless mind isn't a factory defect. It's a high-sensitivity system that was misconfigured for the wrong environment, with the wrong expectations and the wrong milestones. When you understand the biology behind the cycle, you stop blaming yourself and start designing yourself. You don't need to become a different person. You just need to learn the language your own brain already speaks. And when you do that, the list of unfinished projects stops being a graveyard. It becomes a map,